I think we got to talk about the Niners. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers team is a feisty team, and you go on the road across country with that time change. Richard, you know all too well, this is not an easy environment to play in. And they had CMC back. You know, they're getting some healthy bodies back. They got Juwan Jennings back. Ricky Pearsall's looking like a good solve for them in that wide receiving room as well. Richard, you got to be stoked with them coming away with the win on the road. CMC looking healthy. But before we get into CMC, let's talk about the kicking game because we talked about it off air. The San Francisco 49ers spent a third-round pick on Jake Moody, and he struggled. Richard, what are your thoughts about this kicker right now? We saw Deebo get into it with Tabor Pepper, the long snapper. What are your thoughts about Jake Moody? Because this looks like a consistent problem in San Francisco.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Before the injury, I think he was 14 or 15. Looked pretty good. Looked like he was putting away all the doubt that people had, all the concerns. But then you come back from the injury after the two kickers that replaced you pretty much were flawless. On PATs and field goals, if I'm not mistaken, pretty much made every kick. And then you come back in a game like this, and people have some sympathy for you. You miss one kick, you're like, hey, the rust. Then you miss two kicks, you're like, all right now. And then the third kick, you start to have a lot of questions, and you start to see the frustration from both players and fans. And when Deebo Samuel goes up to him and says, lock in, and apparently that's what he said. That's what Tabor Pepper said he said. You don't defend him from that. You don't get to defend him from accountability from the team. When if I give up a touchdown pass and one of my fellow teammates come on like, hey, come on now, lock in now. Somebody's not going to come in and save me. Like, you got to be tough. This is the National Football League. You make a mistake, you are held accountable, just like everybody else. It does not mean because I'm a specialist and they're a different case and this, that, and the third. No, there's accountability. Do your job, and that's what Deebo Samuel was coming to say. Like, this is a high-level football team. This is a team that's been to Super Bowls. There's a standard of play. And to miss 3 field goals after all the work that goes into those drives and to get the ball down the field. And these were long, long drives, and unfortunately the San Francisco 49ers are not converting at a high rate in the red zone this year. So they are settling for a lot more field goals than usual. You got to make the kicks. This game should not have been this close. And it's coming down to the final kick because of missed kicks. And so I'm totally with Deebo here. There are better ways to handle it, and I understand kind of what Tabor is doing. Trying to defend his guy, but you cannot defend people from accountability. I don't care. Not in this game. You can defend from people going overboard or cursing him out or saying you suck or something like that. Then shield him from that. But if he's telling him to lock in, get out of his way and let him tell him. Let him look the man in his eye and tell him lock in. Because that's the truth of what needs to happen here, and that's accountability from the locker room. There has to be. You don't get exempt from accountability because you're a kicker.
Well, you're not wrong. And this San Francisco 49er team has been knocking on the door of the Super Bowl since you were there, Richard. I mean, this window is slowly shrinking. And I think that frustration, what you see, with situations like Deebo, is because of that. He knows how important these games are. These are must-win games in a tight divisional race. I mean, we just saw Arizona knock the brakes out of the Jets. I mean, they are atop of this division right now. And then you got the Rams and obviously the Seattle Seahawks nipping at their heels as well. These games are crucial. Fortunately for them, they come away with the win, and they were leaning on CMC a bit. I mean, 6 receptions for 68 yards. One of those catches was a big ball down the right sideline, huge over-the-shoulder catch for them to keep that drive alive. And then you see him tote the rock 13 times for 39 yards. How big of an impact is CMC for this offense, Rich?
It's huge, Mitch. It's huge because of what Kittle says. He just has an aura. He brings so much attention from the defense. He brings attention from the guy game planning, Todd Bowles. They understand what they have to do to prepare for him, and he still made huge impacts in his game. That 30-yard catch it was near the end of the game. It was crucial. It was critical. A critical drive. Brock Purdy was standing in the pocket, delivering play after play on that drive. One of his best games when they had to have it. A dime to Kittle under pressure. The throw to CMC, he had to release so early because he had unblocked pressure in his face. So he had to let the ball go before CMC was even looking and put enough loft on it for CMC to be able to locate it, get under it, catch it, and it was still a dime, hit him in stride. CMC was able to make a move. It was really cool to just see him back out there, not in pain, doing what he loves to do, and looking like the player we all know him to be.
And then you look at Juwan Jennings, fresh off the injured list as well, comes in, huge game, 7 receptions for 93 yards. And like we talked about it, Ricky Purcell, he comes in with a catch, for a touchdown, his first of his career. It looks like the 49ers have their weapons back. Brandon Ayuk being out for the season, obviously, is a huge blow to this team, but the weapons still are there. They're in-house. I think this Niners team, when healthy, can be one of those competitors in the NFC. The NFC is wide open. Outside of my Honolulu blue and silver Detroit Lions, who, knock on wood, hopefully will walk away with this NFC and take the number 1 seed. The last team I want to see in the playoffs is the San Francisco 49ers for this reason. Brock Purdy is a gamer. We talked about this extensively. But this year, 353 yards, 2 touchdowns in a game where they're trailing late. Richard, you can say whatever you want about Brock, but this guy is a top flight NFL quarterback. On the other side of things, Baker Mayfield, man, this guy is wildly impressive. I know he did not have the statistical line that we would expect, but that one play against Nick Bosa had kids in that stands jumping out of their seats where he's holding off the best defensive end in the NFL. Some would argue Aiden Hutchinson. I might argue that. But Nick Bosa, certainly one of the top 3 defensive ends in the NFL. Baker Mayfield's holding him off with a stiff arm. Richard, how impressive is that as an athlete to an athlete, seeing Baker Mayfield, a smaller human being, hold off this gargantuan Nick Bosa with one left arm?
Well, it was really impressive. It was one of the most impressive plays of the game. Just the part of the game that was in the situation. If he doesn't make that play, the game is pretty much over at that point. And he makes a huge play, but he's doing so much with so little talent and so little veteran presence around him. His number 1 receiver right now is Cade Otton, a tight end. He's missing his 2 all-pro receivers. Mike Evans is still a few weeks out. I don't know if Chris Godwin will play again this season. And so when you're dealing with issues like that and you're playing with the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th receiver, to be in a game like this against a team like the 49ers and still have a chance to win at the end of the game was impressive. He's been really impressive this season, but even though his stat line wasn't impressive, he's played outstanding with all the circumstances surrounding Tampa Bay. They get the bye week, hopefully get a little healthier, but I think their defense played pretty good today. Obviously gave up the touchdown to Purcell and gave us some plays late, but for the most part, they were putting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. They were making the plays that were there. It's going to be a really interesting game next week against the Seattle Seahawks for San Francisco 49ers. This game will be in Levi Stadium. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Seahawks come off that bye week healthier, what things they changed in their defensive game plan, what things they've changed offensively to just help Geno Smith stay upright a little bit longer, because you've seen how successful they can be when he's standing on 10 toes. But this is a great game for the San Francisco 49ers just to see Christian McCaffrey making plays, and it was cool to see their superstars make plays when they had to have them. A 3rd and 13, they had to get a stop. Nick Bosa comes off the edge, makes a play, gets the sack of Baker Mayfield on the drive to tie the game. That you got Kittle making a touchdown catch. You got McCaffrey catching. You got Brock Purdy delivering a dime. You got George Kittle making a huge play. You just got all the flavors of the weekend throughout the game. Juwan Jennings was the player of the game to me, but because of some of the things that he did that don't go on the stat sheet. There was a fumble where Brock Purdy got hit from the side and the ball popped out, and it looked like it was going to be Tampa Bay ball, and that was going to be a disaster of a situation. And Juwan Jennings was able to dive on that football to fight for it and give San Francisco the ball in that possession, and just enough to keep the drive alive for them. I think they ended up punting, but to get a turnover in that situation would have been detrimental. But let's talk about our Breitling player in prime time, and we continue to talk about his growth and how he continues to show up for the San Francisco 49ers. It is Brock Purdy shining today. Like you said, 353 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Led this team on a game-winning drive. He led them on a number of drives deep into enemy territory. I thought he played a fantastic game, and I know he's struggled a little bit this year. He's had some interception issues, but it looks like every quarterback has had some interception issues. You look at the top of the interception list, and it's some of the best quarterbacks in our National Football League, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess it's one of those years. You know, you look at Patrick Mahomes has been either the leader or amongst the leaders in interceptions this season, and this team is 9-0. So it just seems like one of those weird years, but this was a fantastic game from Brock Purdy. Thank you to our friends and partners over at Breitling for allowing us to showcase Brock Purdy and watch him shine.
He definitely shined there, Richard.